Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. That's Rob. I'm Brian. I nailed the Grand Slam today, but I'll hold that till later. Rob, how are you? Did you enjoy the Spanish GP?
Sort of. Yeah, sort of. We'll get there. Did I enjoy it more than a normal Spanish Grand Prix? Yes.
Yeah.
Do I still have the same huge annoyances that I'm having over and over and again this season? Yes. But we'll discuss that when we get there.
Yeah.
However, I am going to pick you up on the Grand Slam thing right from the get-go, right?
All right.
Because because I thought after your barrage of tweets that were seemingly against me, saying that I was a loser, I was like, well, hang on a minute. I don't actually remember disagreeing with you last week. So I went on. This is how much you got in my head, right? Living in my head rent free, you were, because I went and listened to the last 5 minutes of last week's show, where we both agree all the way through
Yeah,
that it
the
will be Red
podium.
Bull
Yeah,
dominance,
yeah.
and we both said, like, you read out the stat of 92% of the winners or whatever from pole, and I said, even if Max screws up qualifying and starts from 15th, he's going to be so dominant he would probably still win from 15th. I said, I think it's going to be a dominant one too. You agreed. You then upped the ante with a
I
good
did.
prediction of a Grand Slam, which you got right. Fair play. It wasn't F1 crap, Brian. You know that's not completely ridiculous for the game that we played. That was actually a pretty normal prediction that he was going to dominate.
It's
Everything's
his
great.
third
No, but,
ever Grand
but
Slam.
just wait. And I agreed with you when you said
Yeah,
he would do the Grand Slam. I
yeah,
said yes. I didn't say,
yes.
Brian, time out. You're an idiot. So imagine my surprise when said Grand Slam comes out, and rather than it be, you heard it here, folks, last week, it's now suddenly Brian rules, Rob's an idiot. I'm like,
How
I
is it?
never once disagreed with you.
How is that anything different than what I said? Anyway, what a great week leading up to this
No,
Spanish
I'm on that
GP.
note. I'm
Yeah.
not recording anymore of today's show. That's it. I'm out of here.
Perfect. I've been waiting to get rid of you for a while now. The ballast is gone. We are ready to go, people.
Oh, come on. We're going to have a great road trip to Canada. Well, not road trip. My road trip. You're going to fly. We're going to get there. We're going to have a great time. But
I
anyway,
cannot
more
wait.
of that later.
Cannot
This is
wait.
all this is all desperately padding because news and social is wafer thin this week, as it tends to be in a back to back. Not a lot happened.
No.
So, just thought I'd fill the airwaves a little bit there with some random banter because I found three things, you found one. But at least if the video vault looks pretty full today. Then we'll have a review of Spanish GP. We'll have a look at fantasy scores because the machine hadn't finished whirring, blowing all of its steam out of its pistons last week to give us the scores for Monaco. Bizarrely, this week has actually done it in time, so I think we can
Well,
get
we
double bubble there.
we are recording later than usual, but that's good.
True.
It allows us to
That's
close
true.
up all the fantasy as we get ready to talk a little bit about next week, which will be a preview of Canada, which means we're going to be there.
I know. Right. Okay. So let's get on with the slim pickings that we found.
Yes, you first.
First one I saw article about Sky teaming up with Sky Sports and F1 are looking to do a broadcast for the younger generation and for the Hungarian Grand Prix at the Hungaroring. They're going to do a bespoke set of a separate stream, which is going to have like graphics. I think it's going to be a bit like catching Pokemon or something. There's going to be like monsters running around the track or something. But they're going to do a separate stream, kind of with commentators that are kind of, I don't want to say dumbing it down, but let's say are speaking to a younger audience with
That's
graphics
better.
on screen to bring them in. And I like it. I think it's a good idea.
Have
I
you
think
seen? I
Formula.
got to ask you this because I saw, we talked about this in the notes, but did you watch any of the NFL on the Nickelodeon feed when they had
No.
that? Okay, I did. My kids thought it was funny. My kids are well beyond Nickelodeon years, but they thought it was kind of cool having some children commentating. But then they called it. They didn't call it the end zone. They called it the slime zone. And whenever a team made it to the slime zone, slime came down. And that was a step too far, a bridge too far for Bry. So, like, I just hope they don't go too crazy with this. I agree it's a great idea, but, often children watch something with their parents. And if I had a child who had any inkling to watch F1 and I had to watch the slime zone of the DRS, I think I'd lose my mind. So, to any parents who end up watching this with their children, I'm thinking about you. You're in my
Yeah,
thoughts.
yeah. Fair enough. I mean, yeah, I hope they don't dumb it down too much.
Yeah.
But I think it's Formula One's a little bit, I don't know, we've grown to love it, but I'm not sure if they're aiming at younger children. I'm not sure that they've got the attention span to watch like a 2 hour race. So it might need Slime Zone, Brian. I'm
They
afraid.
may. And if they dumb it down far enough, they could bring you in for commentary. There were a ton of upgrades coming through this week. Nothing on that? No? Oh, the YouTube's going to be disappointed he didn't react. A ton more upgrades this week that we saw or at least got to feel from Monaco, which didn't tell us anything. So obviously the Merc, the side pods, we'll talk about how that worked. Ferrari flattened out their tub. That
Didn't.
I thought they
Right.
did.
So no, I'm 100% with you, right? The
Yeah.
first camera angle I saw of it, the
It was
first
not as
picture of it,
deep.
I thought it's not as deep, it's rubbish. And then, oh, was it Formula F1 data analysis or whatever the Twitter guys are that we follow for the data thing?
Yeah.
They sent out a old and new side by side comparison photo on their Twitter and said we all thought the new design was shallower. It's got more of a scoop. It's a trick of the
Well,
light. It's
whatever they
bizarre.
did, undo it.
Yes.
Red Bull brought
Yeah.
some upgrades. McLaren had a false dawn. A friend of ours, a former client of ours, was tweeting us how disappointed McLaren came out for. But we're going to talk in 1 minute when we get into practice about floors, because we hit this last week a little bit when they put the Red Bull up on the crane. I've never seen anything like what happened this week, and I'll just save that note because I'm still shocked at something we saw in practice on a floor.
Yep.
Just shocking.
Yep.
Oh, there was a big hype, right? Getting ready for the Spanish
Oh.
GP. As you said, not a ton of news, but Laura Winter and a lot of others had this stat. But Laura's tweet was fantastic. And by the way, if you don't follow Laura Winter, you should. 1,086 F1 races. The hashtag Spanish GP would be Alonso's 362nd start. That is exactly 1/3, 33.3% of all races. It is a 33rd race at this circuit. He has garage and pit box number 33. He is going for his 33rd win, 10 years since his last. And he's on home soil. Have the stars aligned? No.
No.
I didn't know what this is all about, if I'm being honest. It's like one of those things where, the Chris Pratt meme, I don't know what's happening, and now I'm afraid to ask. I didn't until I saw Laura's tweet. Everyone's talking 33. I'm like,
Well,
but Max
Laura
is
missed
number
one.
one now.
Laura missed one as well because the people were really losing their mind when they looked at the date today and said if you add 6, 4, and 23 together, that is also 33, which it is. In fact,
6-4. Oh, the date. Got it. Couldn't
date.
hear you say date. I didn't hear that part.
Oh, okay. Ooh.
I can predict a Grand
But,
Slam, but my ears don't work.
Yeah, nothing really came off out of all of that. Maybe the pressure of 33 got to him because he was rubbish today.
But at least he didn't challenge Lance. Tell him I'm just hanging out back here. Don't worry. I'm a friend.
He couldn't. He did. I think he just said that just to try and make it sound like he could have caught him because he couldn't have got him anyway. Last one was we just missed this. We were just on air. I think it broke up a couple of hours after we came on air last week, and McLaren have signed Rob Marshall from Red Bull for 2024 season. He's going to come across as the technical director of engineering and design. And apparently, he's obviously not newy, but he was a bit of a bigwig in the design area in Red Bull. So it'd be interesting to see how that can pan out. I mean, again, I'll put my cynical hat on here. You go to McLaren right now, there's really only upside. It's going to be difficult to make that car worse.
Right.
So
unless you get the Williams floor on it.
Hold that thought. You got to open up the video vault first.
All right, we'll do this. We're gonna do this relatively quickly. There were some good ones and some bad ones. First off, I somehow found a bunch of Aston Martin content. 2023 F1 Driver Challenge Sentinel One Power Play, Episode 2. All right, 7 minutes. It's actually a little fun. There's Pedro, De La Rosa, Stoffel Van Dorn, Felipe Drugovich, and then you have like their Jessica, Lance, and Fernando. You had the whole team out there doing this, rolling a thing down a line. I can't explain it more than that.
Well done. That's really got me on the hook now. I really want to watch this.
Basically got to push a ball down a stick. But anyway, it's worth it. Check it out. It's actually kind of fun. However, I then accidentally wandered into Cognizant branded corporate crap, and I feel dirty. Cognizant Driver Masterclass tires. So I saw this, and I'm like, yeah,
that got you
tires.
straight away. Yeah, tires,
Clickbait, baby. I clicked on this thing. I'm thinking, all right, tires. And then it is once again just a big bunch of buzzwords they put up on the screen for 1 minute. I've already given it too much time. Don't watch it. It's horrible. There were a bunch of shorts, but I'm not going to hit all of them. However, a channel I have not watched a lot of, F1 drivers react to Max Verstappen's Monaco pole position on the Verstappen channel. It's only 45 seconds. You got to check this out because you get like Albon and you get Valtteri and you get Nick and you get a bunch of people watching the feed of Max's final quali lap for Monaco, watching it in like the interview pen, and they are shocked at what he does on that thing. And it's fun to watch them watch
Yeah.
their peer. So I don't know the Verstappen channel, but I came across it. It was good. Um, Williams had the Monaco road trip. It came out the same day as Monaco. We recorded right away. I didn't see it. It was 4 minutes of Alex and Logan cruising around in a vintage Mercedes with the top down in Monaco. If you're interested in either Williams, Alex, or Logan, check it out. Otherwise, you can pass. And then one last one before I turn it to you for a second, Rob, is I enjoyed this a lot. F1 driver Alex Albon replies to fans on the internet, "It's actually me." It's on the GQ Sports channel. Now, I've done a couple "It's actually me's" before. Normally, they're not that much fun. I enjoyed it, man. Who doesn't like Albon right now? Like, I get not everyone may be an Albon fan, but there's no reason not to like Alex. There's no reason to dislike him. So I watched this. I like Alex. I like Williams. I like this video. And it's a little long, 9 minutes, but feel free to check it out. And the next one is right up your alley. You are the biggest fan of this channel, even bigger than me somehow.
Lollipop Man, he's back. I feel like he's been away a lot this year, but I think he was on vacation for a while at the beginning, so he played catch up. And then, of course, when I thought about it, we haven't seen anything for a while because Imola got cancelled. So I was sort of waiting for something to come through, and it didn't. But the Monaco one comes through, and I'm not going to spoil any of the gags on there. Just it's only 4 minutes long, and the amount of in jokes and quality references he managed to squeeze into every video is just insane. So,
So good.
just go watch it because it's fantastic. And we're going to talk about flaws again later, but they make a great reference to flaws in there as well. So just watch it.
And then the Ask Me Anything Formula One performance engineer on the Haas channel, 4 minutes. Man, I really plumbed the depths. Haas, Williams, Cognizant, Trevor
There's
Green's.
No Hilton channel this week, though,
I've
is
been
there?
checking, man, and Bonvoy, Marriott. They're just waiting on me. Trevor Greensmith is the name of the performance engineer. I enjoyed it. It reminded me of when we had Blake on Break F1, and so it reminded me a lot of that, except shorter. And Haas once had a logistics person on, and I talked about that. I love that Haas takes people from the back office, if you will, people who are so nervous to be on camera and put them right in front of camera. Like, it is great. Like, they don't.
Sweet.
They're so nervous. I mean, I would be too, but that's what I enjoy. And then the last one, this one is for a niche. If this is up your alley, you're going to love it. If it's not, you're going to hate it. Training as an F1 driver for a day. Tyreek Hill featuring Pierre Gasly and Team Alpine. 23 minutes. So it's on the Tyreek Hill channel. So A, you have to want to watch this. B, you have to understand the NFL to know who Tyreek Hill is. But he shows up at the Miami GP. It took him a little while to do the editing, and I'm sure it wasn't Tyreek doing the editing. And he, first of all, calls it Alpine. I'm very happy to be here with the Alpine team. I'm like, that's not right. And he figured it out eventually as the video goes. He hung out with Pierre a bunch, and they did like training drills, and it was kind of cool. They got him a fire suit, and he would. This is my favorite part. And again, if you watch it, there's a lot more. I'm not spoiling anything. He was so hot in the fire suit. You have to understand, Tyreek Hill is out 95 degrees, 100 and some odd on the football field, and he's running. He's one of the fastest players in the NFL. He found the fire suit hot. He's like, I can't wear this thing. I'm dying in here. And he had to like roll it around his waist. So I cannot imagine what the drivers go through with that heat. But anyway, if you're into it, check it out. If you're not, don't.
Well, wow. Ringing
Well
endorsement
said.
as we
Yeah.
slam shut the door of the video vote this week. But thanks for doing your duty again, Brian. Doing the duty so that I don't have to.
Anytime, brother.
Okay. Right. So we came into race week, and as we said last week, we were trying not to be too down on the Spanish GP. Trying to big it up because we thought that the final corner being straightened out was rather than have the silly little chicane was going to make it a better Spanish GP. But even if it was a low bar to beat. So
Right.
expectations, I think, were fairly
Agreed.
tempered coming into the weekend, right? And FP1 and FP2 didn't kind of lift me out of that too much. Not a lot really happened. Maybe there was sandbagging. We saw those good old test tires rolling around the joint again.
Please get
Just
rid of
made me
those things.
feel. Just made me feel. I think we tweeted out from the main account that it just made me feel like Groundhog Day, that we'd like gone back in time to testing, because people weren't even putting in barnstorming laps. They would look like they were putting like long runs on just to see how the cars were going to react. And I get it; it's a good benchmark. If you did testing back then and you do the same kind of runs now with the flow viz and all that kind of stuff, you can do a, where were we versus where we are. I get it. It's just a bit of a snooze fest. So unless you've got anything interesting about FP102, Brian, I think we just move on to free practice 3.
Please.
So we're going to get onto your thing that you caught in a second, but what I also noticed in FP3 is the huge difference between the European and American different attitude to lightning. So, and
And
I've witnessed
explain
this
this to me.
firsthand. So,
Yeah.
when I've witnessed this firsthand, right? When I moved here and I was coaching the kids in soccer, we'd see a dark cloud rumbling in over the distance, and like everybody would be getting nervous, and like my assistant coach is saying, like, should we take the kids off the field? I'm like, it's rain. It's not. We're not going to melt. You play this game in the rain. It's what you're supposed to do. Yeah, but that looks like a lightning cloud. And my reaction is, so, oh my gosh, lightning turns up in this country, and like
Really?
it is full on evacuation. Like swimming pools need to empty, sports fields need to empty, at least in Connecticut anyway, right? And Europeans don't care. And we heard it. They were talking about the Fort Lightning coming down, and the commentary team actually said, "Oh, lightning coming in. Look at that Fort Lightning cracking into the distance." And we've got a lot of open grandstands here, and I'm pretty sure that back if this was being held in Miami right now, the stadium would be emptied and we'd be cancelling all of this. And I was like, "Yes, you would," because I guess lightning does hit people and it is dangerous. But growing up in Europe, it's not something we ever care about at all. And I'm interested to know if it's a regional thing over here, because you're raising your eyebrows as well, and you've lived in like up in Chicago area, down in Miami. Like, what's your lightning
Well, I actually worked
experience?
for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Ooh,
I did. I was an intern there. If anyone wants to know the secrets to the 2004 Stanley Cup championship, you should ring me up. I know all of them. You know what? You're all right. You're right. We do overreact in the U.S. to lightning. As I thought about it, at first I was going to say no. And then growing up in Tampa, which is the lightning capital of the U.S., the answer is still we overreact. You're not wrong. Did I once play in a softball championship final and we had to evacuate the field because of lightning? Yes, we did. So,
but I mean,
yeah.
you're probably not wrong. It's probably born out of the fact that someone's probably unfortunately
Oh,
been
many
like
times. Yeah, yeah,
killed, right?
yeah.
Whereas maybe in the UK, lightning never hits anyone. I'm not sure, but it just sort of struck me.
I,
Pardon the pun.
yeah.
That the
Can we
attitude
move
was
on
so
to the
different.
important part?
Anyway, let's move back onto F1, shall we, and
Yeah,
get away from
please.
lightning, because that's about as exciting as the Grand Prix had been. Practice had been at this point. Was there
Until
were observations of lightning?
until Logan went off and they lifted the Williams into the air and we got to see what everyone was waiting to see, the floor. Just like last week when Dr. Obbs looked at the Red Bull floor and compared it to the Ferrari and the Mercedes, and he said, look at how much more three-dimensional, the depth, the tunnels, the channels, the diffusers, the Fitzer valves, all the things that people were looking for. And then we see the Williams floor, which is made out of, as all I can tell, a blank run of carbon fiber. There's not a single contour, or maybe just around the middle. There's
You, you
nothing.
you can get them at the hardware store. They're they're
You
they're they're,
can.
they're bathtub liners.
I actually, I think you could buy one from Delara for $5 right now. I mean, there is no way. So then people went nuts on the internet. Engine Mode 11 went crazy, but Brake, second shout out today. He said there is no possible way Albon has been pulling some of these lap times with that car. And he's right. I mean, they literally, like, if they had a stock part and everyone then went and molded it, Williams like, yeah, good enough. We'll keep it flat, blank.
I mean, it is bizarre because on the Red Bull, the underside, almost the only flat surface was the plank because they have to.
Mm-hmm.
On the Williams, plank is the most aesthetically pleasing part of the underside of the car.
It's unbelievable. If I were working for Williams right now, and I worked on the floor department, I'd start tightening out my resume. And B, like, they should just try to make the Red Bull floor as best as, I mean, I don't know how hard it is to make a floor. It can't be that hard, right? Some clay.
Yeah, you go and throw some Venturi tunnels on it and physics and stuff. And
done.
Yeah, done.
All right.
Anyway, the lightning was cracking. The track track was getting greasy, but it was that awful situation where it was a little too greasy for anybody to go out and do runs on slicks because it wasn't worth the risk of damaging cars. But the Inters weren't going to do anything either, so we kind of had almost zero running. Then obviously they were padding for content on TV, and they had an interview which I actually did find interesting because, and you're going to say it's because it's Mick, but it doesn't matter that it was Mick. But they were talking about how um, if I got this right, if I was following along correctly, Mick had been sent back to Brackley overnight to run lots of simulations in wet running because they were now suddenly concerned that it was going to turn into a wet race and they hadn't got the data. So they basically sent Mick back. He'd gone and done his simulation runs, come back for FP3 to feed into the team all of his knowledge, which in hindsight was a complete waste of time. Because
Hey, he's getting a paycheck. You got to earn it.
yeah, true. So we had almost no running in FP3, really none whatsoever, which meant that, quali was maybe going to be a little bit spicy because no one had really got any fast runs in. Add to that the track had dried out, but
Some
now
of
we
it,
were
most of it.
starting to get, yeah, most of it, but we were then starting to get drops of rain coming back in again. So it was literally Q1 was going to be, you've got to get out, you've got to get a lap in because who knows if that's going to be your only dry lap. So everyone crashed out. Sorry, not crashed out.
Spun out.
Everyone rolled out of the pit lane. I mean, sorry, right at the beginning. Apart from Ferrari because they want to do a wet lap.
Yeah, exactly. It's
I
like Brazil
despair.
last year. I'd rather go out on inters. I don't want to get any time in on some slicks. Everyone spun. It was wild. Yuki and De Vries, and then De Vries again. Fernando was off. Albon was off. Sargent was off. Everybody went off, and it was just chaos. And then when Valtteri went off and came back on, someone else at the same time went off somewhere else, and they put out a red flag, and I was so confused because no one was stopped on track, and everyone's moving, and the red flag, and I'm like, why are we red flagged? And then we found out gravel on track. Like, we
Was
have to
it?
stop the whole race for some gravel on track.
I don't buy that. I think because of all the spins that were going on, the guy with his finger or girl with their finger over the red flag button
Hit the
got twitchy
button.
finger syndrome. There's another spin. There's another spin. Surely one of them's going to beat you in a minute. And then Valtteri, because he came to a standstill for at least 10 nanoseconds, they were like, "Yeah, red flag." So I just think they went a little early on the red flag there. It didn't
Agreed.
really seem to be. And then when it got going again, a great little moment where I both got confused watching a spin, but obviously not just me, the driver himself. De Vries was having a bit of a nightmare trying to keep it on the track.
Same
And then
spot too.
same spot, but he spun it when the car was straight. And I don't understand. I've watched the replay a number of times now, and I don't understand what happened. And just as I'm there thinking, I don't get this, I don't understand what's going on here, we heard the radio message from Nick going,
What am I
"What am
doing
I
wrong?
doing wrong?" I was like,
Well, that
even
just
he
shows
doesn't
you
know.
Yuki is better than we think. I mean, not saying we don't think he's good, but he is in the same tub of crap, and he's bringing it around the track consistently in the 9th, 10th, and 11th spot in races. And I mean, it was shocking to me. And then the Ferraris eventually got out of the pits. They went to run, and we realized immediately Charles was going to have just some challenges. He was really struggling with his car. Carlos was doing all right, but then they were in formation, Charles and Carlos. And I'm guessing, and Martin Brundle and I thought the same thing. Someone told Pierre, there's a Ferrari behind you. So Charles goes by, and Pierre goes, all right, I'll move back over to the racing line, and totally blocked Carlos.
Yeah,
I mean, cut him off. It was like, you're in traffic and someone's trying to merge. He just merged right in front of him. And I'm like, oh no. And so you knew a three-car penalty
100%.
was coming. I mean, you knew it.
100%. There's no way they told him both Ferraris are coming. They've just said there's a Ferrari on a hot lap behind you, and like you say, he's going, oh, there we go. Pew, there's a Ferrari. Okay, I'll
Move
get
back
back on
over.
with what I was doing now. Felt sorry
And
for him
so,
because
well, you knew it was going to be a three place penalty because that was what Charles got in Monaco for what he did to Lando. And then again, Leclerc's really struggling with time, and then he comes in with 4 minutes and 30 seconds left. And I'm watching this, and they go, "Oh no, he's been called to the weighbridge." And I literally yelled at the TV. I'm like, "No, he's in a rush. He's got to get back out on new tires." And the
what are the
times
rules
kept,
behind what are
yeah.
the rules behind the weighbridge? Because it just seems really random. You almost feel like you shouldn't be allowed to weigh somebody like in that last 2 minutes of quali.
First of all,
Like
I have to agree. You should
seriously?
not be no. You should not be allowed while the clock is going. You should not be allowed to do a weighbridge. You don't do it during the race. So like they should wait till quali's
Could you imagine
done.
if they did?
I mean, you know who they would do it to? It'd be Valtteri. They'd be weighing him every 5 minutes. It was wild. Like I did not. You can't. You should not be allowed to do weighbridge during the clock count of quali. When they come back in, once the flag goes, anyone who comes in, you should be able to do. But anyway, it didn't really matter. The times were tumbling. The gas man went out, and he got in the way of Max this time. And I had the gas man in my fantasy lineup, and I
Yeah.
watched this, and it was like I was the better at the on track betting, and I'm just ripping up the stubs. I'm like, damn it,
Although
that's two
bizarrely in this year's
penalties.
thing, but although bizarrely in this year's thing, you're almost better off if he gets the
Right.
penalties because you get more
Move
points for the
back, more
overtakes than you
overtakes.
would for him starting
I
fifth on the
agree.
grid. So
I agree. And then, but so we lost Valtteri, K Mag, Albon, Logan, and Charles. How I still don't know what happened to Charles this weekend. Like someone has to explain to me what's wrong with that Ferrari.
yeah, I
It's
mean,
the tubs. Someone
is
says they
it?
lowered the tubs. They raised the tubs. I have no idea.
Uh, Let me hold my thought to the end of quali because there's a nice little team dynamic thing that we can
All
do
right.
when we get to the end of the quali. We'll come back to Ferrari in a bit. So
Q2.
Q2,
Yeah.
bit of a nothing burger for most of it. They kind of all seemed to sit there, went out, did their laps, but then it kind of got interesting towards the end when we saw good old Checo.
Oh God, what is he
Um,
doing in qualies? 2 races in a row.
I don't know, but he
I don't
decided he
know.
wanted to do. He'd heard his friend Sainz loves the trips to the gravel. He wanted to see what it was all about, so he went and had a little trip over the gravel.
I mean, I have a handful of drivers I'm kind of soft on. I really appreciate Charles and Checo are two of them, and so I'm watching this. I'm like, oh, this is just fantastic. Just is there anyone else I like who can we put Ricardo back in a car and just get him off in the gravel just to screw with me a little more? Crofty did have a good stat. We love stats. Crofty, thanks for giving us one. Three drivers have been to Q3 all year, every race. Alonso, Carlos, and Charles. Whoops, there goes Charles. So now it's two who've made it to Q3. And then at the end of Q2, after Checo's had his little debacle, we had a reminiscent Nico and Lewis situation. Was it 2016 when they came
Yeah,
together in the Spanish GP? Well, Lewis and George came together, and George just didn't know he was there and just kept moving over and and ran into Lewis on the pit straight.
there was a brilliant. I think it was the Slittle guys content creation, whether you follow him on Twitter or Instagram, he's the account that shrinks everything down to tiny versions. And he did one side by side where it said how big how big Lewis's car actually is, which was the actual picture of the two of them side by side as George is running him off the road. And then the next picture was how big George thought Lewis's car was, and he shrunk it down into the little car version. Genius.
Oh,
But yeah, what
yeah.
was he doing? It's not like he didn't know he was there. And they tried to dismiss it and they kind of said, oh yeah, it was just a miscommunication. Whatever.
Yeah, well, we
But
lost Checo, George, Joe, Yuki, and Nick DeVries, and Lando was second, leaving Q2. And
yeah.
every McLaren fan was running around their rooms, clutching their tinkles, totally excited that McLaren was back. So then we go to Q3.
Yeah, which was done and dusted within about the first 2 minutes. You
It
know,
was.
first 2 minutes, Max goes and sets out one of the most, well, it was the fastest lap we'd seen all weekend. A country mile clear of everybody else. He got back to his garage. He got his slippers on. He got his comfy jacket on and just sat there with a little cup of tea and just watched the rest of it go around because job done. Job done. No, I don't even think there was an ounce of doubt in his mind that he would have to go out again. I know he did,
Well, the best part is he
but
did, and he was actually doing better, and they just abandoned the lap because no one had beaten him. He's like, I'm good enough. We don't need to finish it off,
we don't need to rub their noses in it. I mean, this
Yeah.
would be so much better, but I've already done it. So
Hamilton, though, showed us something with the Mercedes, and we're going to talk about teammates in a second. We actually,
yep.
we'll talk about that in a second. But Hamilton, Alonso had floor damage, which we'd seen after his little trip in the gravel in Q1. They had more, as we'd call it here in the States, duct tape on the bottom of that thing than you can believe. And actually, I was watching them work on the car, and the mechanic's job is hard, but there were two or three guys laying under the car when it was on those wobbly jacks. They got these jacks, which are like, basically some dude's got his foot on it, holding it up. They got one in the front, one in the back. And there are three guys under the car putting duct tape on the floor. And maybe they have a real floor that needs it, or maybe they have a Williams floor and they're just trying to flatten it out more. I don't know. But the point is, I'm thinking those guys are brave, because if Fernando like moves around in the car a little bit, scratches his armpit and the thing falls off the jacks, those guys are in a lot of trouble. But they were
Those
fine.
cars don't weigh anything.
Yeah, put your head under one. And anyway, it was just wild to kind of watch what happened. McLaren, the gas man, everybody was coming through so fast and so high up the grid. I was excited with the way Q3 was shaking out, weren't you?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
no, it was a good call. I mean, where we ended up with Max, Carlo, Norris in third,
Norris.
Gassman, Hamilton, Stroll out qualifying Alonso for the first time in his career alongside him, Ocon, Hulkenberg, and Alonso and Piastri. So
Piastri.
Alonso's duct tape could only just about edge out Piastri, and that was kind of foreshadowing the way things were going to go
Yeah,
for
totally.
Fernando this weekend. Um, but so then we got to race. Oh no, sorry, teammates. So
Yeah.
we had a bit of a tale of teammates with kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. So
Yeah, we
we
did.
had Max on pole, Perez go into the gravel. We had Sainz put in that Ferrari second and being the closest challenger to Max. And then earlier you just said, "Oh, Leclerc, what's going wrong with that car?" Is it the car? I mean, he moaned about how it was the back end and he had no grip, so they changed the tires. He then moaned and said he still had no grip going around left-handers, so it must be the car. So they took his car out of parc ferme conditions and put him to a pit lane start instead to rebuild the entire back end of that car.
Which I
And
never
he
figured
did,
out what was wrong with the car, and I
oh,
still
and
don't
they,
think they know.
I still don't think they know.
Agreed.
I think they. Tinfoil hat time. Did they just do it to humour him? Because the radio message that came on originally suggested that they looked at all the data and they couldn't see anything wrong with the car. And are they just going, Leclerc, this is you. You're getting beaten by
He's
Sainz.
you think he's an
You know you
18th
can't.
position driver?
I think he was this weekend. I just think he wasn't on it, and I think knew he had no chance to get anywhere near Sainz. You can't. I don't
What?
know. We'll get there when
All
we
his
get to the race
talent
review.
left
But
the
he
room?
was. Where was it today?
I
We'll
don't
get there when
know.
we get into the
Yeah.
race review. I mean, they rebuilt that thing and gave him brand new parts for every part of that back end. They redid the gearbox and everything. And we'll talk about his
I think they gave him like
awful,
90
awful
yeah, 92% of the power.
question.
I mean, there's no way that's not Charles. But it was
Based on
also
this year,
Lewis.
I think it really is. We had Lewis and
Okay.
George.
Lewis and George,
Yeah,
another big split. It
yeah.
was wild.
And we had Alonso and Stroll. If we talk about shocks, I mean, at least they both
Yeah.
made
They
Q3,
were
but we had
close,
shocks
but
for the way
Stroll
round
first.
that they were.
By
Yeah.
the way, you
So,
nailed it. It's only taken 5 more races for Stroll to do something good. So when you said he was the third best
oh,
driver, yeah, you nailed
I
it.
no, no. Well, again, you misquoted me for the Grand Slam. Now you misquoted me for this because when I said third, it was at that time. I said, let's see how things go over the next few races, which obviously haven't been fantastic. But
Yeah.
he's kind of like the anti-Checo because when we've been to street circuits, he sucks. We come back to a proper racetrack, and I don't think Lando is cut out for not Lando. Sorry, I don't
Fernando?
think Lan.
Lance.
Huh?
Who are you talking about now?
What? Stroll is not
Yes.
cut out for street tracks, and it showed. He was terrible in Monaco, and he put in a good showing, as we'll get on to now.
The
Um,
race.
the race, yeah. So, do you know what? The beginning, I had real high hopes for. A, we had a nice mixed up grid. B, we had Verstappen on mediums and Sainz right behind him on softs, and I was like, oh, come on, Carlo, launch this bad boy. And he did, and he chickened out. I thought it at the time that he had him and he had the corner, and I thought maybe I haven't seen the replay yet from the right angle. And then Bryson Sullivan on Twitter put the side by side in dash cams from Verstappen's point of view, and he did. He wasn't just level; he was almost a third of a body car ahead of Verstappen going into the first corner, and not let him through, eased up, chickened out. Whatever he did, he had that corner. And as people were rightfully saying, if Max is in that position against somebody else, elbows out, and I would have taken that corner because it's mine.
Right.
Carlos Sainz, is it because he knows he's not really racing him and it's just not worth the glory of the first corner? Do you think that creeps into his mind at all?
I do. 100% do. I mean, I think they
Mm,
know, like, why would you be the guy who crashes into Max at the first corner when you know you're not going to beat him? When you know he's in a different car than you are? When you know
yeah.
he's going to get it's almost juvenile. It's like I'm out here, in a Hyundai and you're in a Ferrari, but I'm going to beat you off the line by running into you. And I'm not saying
But
that's what would happen, but and I know he's entitled to that corner. I think he was being smart. Personally, he got to finish the race. If he'd run into
I
Max, he may not have finished the race.
but now does that mean we're in a situation where nobody bothers just trying to see if they could
Oh, I'm
beat
with you.
Max?
I'd love to see people.
Yeah.
I'd love to see people do that, and someone needs to be doing that more. He finished fifth. I mean, he got 10 points. That's something. And when your teammate
Yeah,
is
no, I
lost
agree.
in Nick DeVries land, I mean, he needed to bring points for the team. So it's like a balancing act, and I get it. I would love to see people go up to Max and act like Max to Max, but you know, I don't know. I don't fault Carlos as much as you seem to.
No, he was there. It was the corner. I
Yeah, I
mean, I
know.
just think take it. If you're there, take it. He wouldn't have taken Max out. Max is wise enough to have yielded at that point because he was definitely ahead of him. But
Yeah.
anyway,
And then Lewis,
um,
same corner, Lewis and Lando come together. And I have absolutely 0% of this on Lewis. I have a little bit on Lando and a lot of it on Racing Incident. But
yeah,
Lando, he's got to do better. He kind of backed up a little when people were moving around, and then he thought he'd stick his nose back in there, and there was nowhere to put it. He pulled a Stroll from Monaco, where he kept just putting his nose in places that it would not succeed. And
he
so
didn't seem. Yeah,
sorry. No, I was gonna say I just didn't get it. I mean, I appreciate him trying. He had a great grid position, but it completely ruined his race completely.
he didn't seem to react when they showed the onboard from his, and I think the commentary team said it that um, it's signs backing off from Verstappen, which causes a ripple effect to Lewis, is quick enough to react and ease off and not run into the back of signs. And Norris just isn't. He didn't have the same reaction time, or he's not looking in the right way, or he's not concentrating, and he doesn't lift or brake in a time and ends up running into the back of Lewis. It's like you say, racing incident, but with a dash of Ando, what you doing
Yeah,
added sprinkled in on top.
I don't think you put a single percent on Lewis for that in my mind, and he finished
No,
17th. Lando did, so he screwed himself by not being as ready for it. Stroll moved up a bunch. George decided to go to the runoff and pass everybody, and then come
no.
back in. I know he didn't pass anyone. He had all the
His
passes done.
start. Oh my gosh.
I
When they
know.
went on
They
about
showed
it,
the start. It was amazing.
oh, that start, if that's anybody else, do you know what? This is the bit where I feel a little bit I feel a bit sorry for George on this one. Max Verstappen does that start. Lewis Hamilton does that start. Let's say Charles Leclerc or Fernando does that start and makes up 5 places by the first corner. Before he'd even hit taking the runoff thing, everyone, we're watching that replay 1,000 times and marveling at the skill of it. George does it. We don't even find out about it until until there's a steward inquiry about whether or not he made
He
an
passed
advantage from
anybody
doing the. He didn't
exactly
pass anybody on that runoff.
because he'd done it
Five
already.
he'd already done. He'd already done it. It was like that was Mario Kart when you timed the
Well,
3, 2, 1 perfectly.
exactly. But I have a question. In all seriousness, when you watch do something like that, how do you know as Mercedes that he'd done all those moves and then rejoined in the same place so he did not get an advantage? Because you have to give those spots back quickly if you got any. And it looked like he got a bunch because he was so much higher. But then, as you said, we didn't know he'd had this barnstorming beginning till they finally figured out he didn't get a penalty. Like, what? Why not? And they went back and showed. I was shocked. I thought it was great. But if you're Mercedes, how do you know that? How do no one's worried like George, give back a spot or two just to be
they've all
safe.
got they've all got F1 TV subscriptions. They just hit the rewind and watched it. You see,
Yeah, that's
they
what it was.
and joking aside, they've got to have something like that, haven't they? Because you're right. Otherwise, to be safe, they're going to go, George. You might need to give
You
a
don't
couple
want a
of places
penalty. You don't
back.
want 5 second
Yeah,
penalty. Just give the spot
yeah.
back quick if you have to. Anyway, Lando pits. It was terrible. Gas man down to 14th. And we start seeing some of the DRS on the main straight. In the notes I was taking on lap 6, Checo took Nico Hulkenberg for 9th with DRS on the main straight, passed him by about 14 miles. And I wrote, Rob, question mark. I know you're going to get on a rant. Do you want to do it now or wait till we get into more of the DRS overtakes? I actually thought it was great. I thought it was a great race. So before you get off my lawn, let me just say I enjoyed it. 107 overtakes.
They're not
I
real
thought it was a really good race.
overtakes.
What?
So what?
So what?
Yeah. Who cares when they're easy like that? You don't.
What?
They're just pointless. So I'm starting to fall out of love with overtakes now because
Maybe I
it's
will be
almost
doing
as
this
if
podcast with someone else.
it,
If you
it,
don't like DRS overtakes, you better find another sport, brother.
they're rubbish and they've got to get rid of it as soon as possible. What's happened now, and I'm honestly feeling this, is that now that the cars have got, now with the cost cap and no one wants damage and no one wants to risk collisions, I would swear that team principals are telling their drivers, spend the majority of the lap just making sure you're within the DRS zone. Don't bother. Don't bother trying to put a move in somewhere risky. Just stay within a second, wait until the DRS zone, cruise past and maybe wave as you go past because it'll be easy. The vast majority, there was only one DRS overtake today got me off the edge of my seat because it
Yuki's, you got a
was very
penalty.
late in the DRS zone.
Oh,
No, I think it was George on Science, wasn't it? Like right up at almost the breaking point of turn one, almost a good old pre-DRS old school beat them into the braking zone area, not a glide past with a 20 km/h difference and just wave as you go past. And it's for me, it's ruining the sport because I used to love watching the real skillful drivers like Fernando in his prime was a master of it. I'm not really wanting to overtake you in this corner, but I'm going to start my thing that I want to do in about 4 corners' time. I'm starting to get you out of position right now. I'm going to be behind you, making you make defensive lines into corners on bits of the track you don't want to be, so that in about 3 corners' time, I'm going to swoop and take you. And they are the chef's kisses overtakes. We don't see defensive driving anymore. We don't see the masterclasses of people being able to hold people off behind because there's literally no point. Because as soon as you get onto that DRS straight, you are just a sitting duck. It's a bit like I was thinking about this about right, an overtake is an overtake. Are there 107 overtakes today? Yes, there were. Stats don't lie. There were. However, it's a bit like I don't know, in my other favorite sport, I'll call it soccer. Um, Watching a really well crafted goal versus one that someone accidentally kicks into their own net. They both count as one, but one's a lot more enjoyable than the other. Or an empty netter in hockey. Okay, great. But DRS overtakes are boring, and I hope they die soon. I hate them.
this Rob's rant brought to you by Rob Vale.
Okay,
I mean,
fine, right.
I mean,
let
like,
let me give you the floor for the
wait,
counter
hold on.
argument of why you can enjoy a DRS overtake.
Wait, can I get in something on?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The
I'm
floor's
the
yours.
co-host of this podcast.
Speak for DRS. Go.
No, I'm gonna say one thing to agree with you. Actually, on lap 9, Checo in the Red Bull, working his way through the field as Charles did not do. Checo has DRS on Joe, but Joe had DRS because he was behind Alonso. So Alonso is in front of 2 cars with DRS. You would think it would be a train, which is what we've seen for 400 years or however long we've had DRS. When 2 cars have DRS, it's a train behind the car in the front. However, Checo not only blew past Joe, he almost had Fernando on the same straight. He had the same DRS as Joe had, but he passed the Alfa Romeo like it was stuck in mud. But he had DRS. So I don't know, man. The way I look at it is everyone has time to develop their cars. And now with the cost cap, everyone has supposedly the same amount of resource. Do a better job. I mean, that's what the football mantra is. Basically saying, look, you don't want to lose by 25, 30 points? Do a better job. Get a better defense. Play better offense. Get a better coach.
Hang on.
So build a better car.
Thing. Yeah, but so what? Like you told me the other week about not to mix two things together that got nothing to do with each other. Let's imagine we've got 2 cars with identical DRS. The one behind is always going to be faster. So
I know.
Why? How can you enjoy a DRS overtake? Just please give me. And this isn't me trying to like be facetious or anything, but I don't get it. I don't see any enjoyment of watching a car artificially go past someone faster. I don't get it.
So, a couple things. One, I think they need to, and we actually talked about this. I was hopeful that they would shorten the DRS straight on the home straight. We talked about this, and they often have. They didn't. It was too long. It was too powerful. 2, we mentioned this with Molly when we were kind of talking about how we would change DRS, and then we talked about it in our How We Fix F1. I'd like to see a limitation to how much you have it, and I've thought about it. I came up with a conclusion. The answer is 2/3 the number of laps. So if there are, or 3/4 the number of laps, if there are 60 laps, you get 45 pushes of the DRS button during the race. And there may be 2 instances of DRS. You can only use it 45 times total. And so if there's 120, 60 laps, two zones, 120, you can use it 45 times. But you don't have to be within a second of anyone. Use it like NASCAR's or IndyCar's push to pass. Something, man, just something. I don't like the way it works. I agree. I'm not as negative as you. I think at least you get a chance to get by somebody. Still got to be close.
No, I agree. But all you really did then, rather than kind of back up why you thoroughly enjoyed 107 breeze past overtakes, you kind of came and joined me with the whole it's broken, let's fix it.
It is.
Okay. Well, I could
but
take that.
I'll take some versus none, is what I would say. Anyway,
yes,
sorry for Rob's.
Anyway,
we took one off.
I'm not
Pit
sorry.
Window
Kill
opens.
DRS.
We're seeing some tire dag on the softs. And then we saw again. I enjoyed this. Like Ocon went in for a pit, came back out into Joe and Yuki, and they were kind of swooping around. Sonoda got Joe and Hulk later, 14th, 15th, 16th. It was. I enjoyed this. Like even if it was all
This
on
is
the straight. Yeah.
Oh, so sorry. I was going to say because this is the bit, and I figured you'd like this because this is the bit I really enjoyed as well, which is, oh, it wasn't the boring one stopper.
No.
If anything, save today's race. Like DRS, kill it, fire it into the sun. Let's never see it again. However,
Real
tire
tire dag.
strategy, 2 stops, 3 stops, real tire deg. I was like, oh yes. So the fact that for half the race, maybe 3/4 of the race, I couldn't really work out where everybody was
No.
because I was trying to do the mental arithmetic of
Agreed.
right, you've stopped once, but you've had hards, and love that. Love the strategy. Sorry, carry on.
No, I was just gonna say, Hamilton got into Carlos's DRS, box for Carlos, and he's sitting on their Y. And then Lewis is like box now. Leclerc pitted. Oh man, Leclerc. Oh. But like we were saying, tire strategy mattered. And at this point, the question is it a two stopper for some teams or a three stopper? And that makes a big difference. 20 seconds in the pits, but can you save that time on track with the tires you have? And I know we actually have had this other argument before about people like Checo who can manage their tires. You and Rob Reed ganged up on me and said that doesn't matter. And I said it should. Well, it did. And so I enjoyed watching it. Rob Reed, I know you're listening. And so I enjoyed watching this. I thought it was a fun race. I thought it was a good race.
Yeah, no.
I
So
struggled
just
a little bit because I missed some. Like I didn't see Charles Leclerc for most of the race, except when De Vries was passing him. I
that pit stop at 17. I mean, that just blew my mind. You've
Yeah,
gone out on the hards where you're going to try and run this thing long, and you
and then he
pit at the
comes in right
same.
after Carlos.
Oh my gosh! Like,
Why?
what the heck is going on with Ferrari? Well, specifically Leclerc, because Sainz doing quite well, but actually, just something you just touched on. No, right when it's like this, and it's proper tire strategy, and is the blend of 2 stops, 3 stops, then being the Checo tire whisperer, I can appreciate because
Yeah,
it's inside a better, bigger tire
yeah. You can go
strategy.
two
When
stops
we've
if you
had,
can.
yeah, exactly. But when we've had some of this stuff that we've seen so far this year, where it's been tire whispering on tires that are just going to run forever anyway, and we've had one stoppers, that's just really annoying me. So this was doing really well. The one thing that made me laugh was after those pit stops, Lewis came out and the camera was right behind Lewis as he charged back out onto the track, and the caption came up: Lewis Hamilton in second, chasing Max for first. And I
No,
just thought,
no,
no, he's not.
not really.
He is second. I'll give you that.
Yeah, technically Max is in front of him. Oh man! So then we go into the 20s. We saw Leclerc take Gasly for 15th. And then we had Valtteri on Pierre. And then Gasly's back in front of Charles. I don't
Did
know.
you see that? Did we ever see that?
Nope. Never saw it.
Because they showed Leclerc chasing the gas man for a
For
while,
a while,
and we
yeah, yeah.
saw him go past. I mean, then we saw him go past him, and then it must have been. I think you've put the notes here, lap 24. So it must have been 3 laps later. I saw that on the order on the left hand side, it got gas ahead of
And I
Leclerc.
didn't understand why, and they never
It's
showed
like
us.
we never saw it, did we? Okay, good. It wasn't just me
No, Charles
missing
was in the
something
witness
then.
protection program for a good portion of the day. Yeah, you know what? It was a shocker, right? In lap 25, Lewis finally pits, comes back out well behind Carlos, and Max is now 21 seconds ahead of George. 21 seconds. We're 25 laps in. I mean, that is insanity. And I'm sitting here thinking, my Grand Slam predictions looking pretty good.
Your Grand Slam was nailed from the moment Carlo backed out in corner one.
No,
I
actually,
mean, never
Lizzie
in doubt.
Lizzie actually said the minute we saw that Max was starting on mediums, I had it. So even before that,
Yeah, but if Carlo hasn't backed out, how long do you have to lead? Is it crossing the line for the Grand Slam? If or
each
led a
lap you
lap
have to
at all
lead each
for?
lap. He started yeah, you have to. It's not like
No, I mean
within a
like
lap.
okay, so if Carlo had beaten say Max into corner one,
As long as Max is
mid
leading after lap one, I think it's that would
yeah,
be
yeah,
Grand
it's
Slam.
crossing the line. So if Max
I
had
believe
regained it,
led
okay,
every
okay,
lap is how it's phrased. So I don't know.
right, got you.
I could be wrong. And then we saw what became, Charles' race. He was battling Nick De Vries on pace the whole race. And you know
Yeah.
what? I hate to say this, but it was a couple races ago. He was battling someone else back there. I can't remember who it was. It was someone else in the lower midfield. Again, I don't know what the hell's going on. Pardon my language. I'm sorry. We're trying to be a
No,
clean podcast, but
I think you can get away with that and still be clean.
okay.
But I agree. It's like he's should be blowing past a lot of these
Should be. He's
drivers.
in a Carlos
I,
is up fourth and fifth.
oh, right. So rewind back to what we were talking
I
about right at
know,
the
I
beginning.
know, I know.
This is when I'm starting to doubt Charles, and I really wish I wasn't. But it's like, is he just one of those drivers? Yeah, not much cheering this year. Is he one of those drivers that is very fragile in terms of if everything is in the zone and everything is going his way, he can pull out these monster laps, be pole, and do great things like we saw last year when the car was underneath him? Is he one of those drivers at the moment something's not quite right? He almost just shuts down and goes, "Well, I can't do anything." Then the rear of this car's awful. It's terrible. I mean, new tires. We did. Well, rebuild the back of the car. We did. You're still battling De Vries. I mean, something's not right there.
I
I
hate to do
could
this,
not
but
believe what I was seeing today.
I couldn't either. This is the second time this season we figured out that
Slow button on, slow button on.
they don't know how to take off the slow button.
That's what it is.
Anyway, by lap 32, George comes in with my favorite part of the race. He goes, bit of drops coming down, and the team's like, huh? He goes, oh, wait, hang on. There might just be sweat inside my helmet. I heard this, and it brought back memories. I got to say this real quick. So the last time I did a track day, I have a tendency to get a little hot, a little overheated. And so you got to wear a helmet, and you got to have long sleeves and jeans just for regular track days. You don't need a fire suit. But so I've got jeans on, long sleeves, and a helmet. And so I'm wearing this thing, and I'm out in my car, and you got to turn air off because that takes away a few horsepower. I mean, like I'm racing people. And so you had, I think, 30 minutes to go out and bang around the laps. And so 25 minutes or so into it, I'm sweating so badly in the helmet, I have to pit. I actually have to come into the pits, and the way we did it at this track day, you have to windows down. And so like I was passing people. I just happen to have enough horsepower and of course a lot of talent. And so whenever you pass someone, they wave you by. So you're going to, because we're all driving these cars home. So they wave you by, I go by. But then I have to go around. When you pit, you actually point to the pits so people behind you know you're pulling off to the right, and they can go around you on the left. 25 minutes into the 30 minutes, I couldn't drive anymore because the sweat coming down on my face was like a rain in my own helmet. And so I pulled off into the pits. I did this for YouTubers, and I pulled off into the pits, and I pulled in, and someone came up to me and goes, "Is everything all right with the car?" I'm like, "Yeah, no worries." And I took the helmet off, and it was like I'd had an upside down
Niagara Falls.
Yes, it was like I had a fishbowl on upside down, and I was so hot. It felt so good to take that off, and I was ticking cool as my car was. We just put the hood up, and you could hear the exhaust ticking cool as I sat there thinking, I think I need a Gatorade. But anyway, that's what happened to George.
But the funniest thing about the George one is like I was trying to work this out. Would I have fessed up? Because I think there was a few laps between it. He said, "Oh, there's drops at turn 5." So he was specific. At turn 5, there's drops at turn 5. And then it was like 2 or 3 laps later, he comes on. He goes, "Is anyone else reporting any rain? Because it might just have been sweat." And I'm like, I would have just left that. I would have.
Agreed.
The moment I realized it was sweat, I would have just gone silent unless they came back on the radio and went, "George,
But he brought it up in the
rain?"
cool down room. He goes, "I thought it was raining. It was sweat in my helmet." I'm like, "Oh, I can relate, brother." Anyway, so the top 10 at this point were basically everyone you'd expect, except Yuki was 8th and Joe was 10th. So we saw
Joe was doing a good, solid drive there, which
Joe had a
unfortunately
great
shines a light on
I know.
this friend of the show, Valtteri, but who did not have
Joe
a great
was
day.
9th. He finished 9th today, and Valtteri finished 19th.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck happened. He'll be back. He'll kick some ass next week, or 2 weeks, Canada, because we'll be there. He's going to be in the top 10. I feel points coming for Valtteri.
Ooh, okay. Where are we? Right, 40s. I was looking at the notes and I just saw Leclerc with De Vries, and I'm like, this could literally be anywhere in the race. But
the gas man pitted at lap 40. He had a 5-second stop. His prior stop was 4 seconds. Anything that he could control and screw up and went badly for the gas man this week. But he still did all right.
yeah,
That Alpine is slippery.
Yeah. And then George came in and went on to softs, which I thought was a little early for softs, given the deg that we'd seen, because it was lap, whatever it was, lap sort of 40, mid-40s somewhere.
Yeah,
and I was like,
20 some odd
66,
laps ago. 20,
yeah, 66
low
lap race, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, but he was flying. We had, and then that kind of all the second round came in. Lewis came in, Checo went in. And then we had Ocon almost deciding it was time to take Alonso out of the race.
Those guys do not like each other, and they will.
I think Alonso made a snide comment about his flat floor.
Oh boy. And then by lap 53, Max now had 39 seconds on Lewis. 39 seconds on Lewis. Russell was five back
which
assigned.
means
Yeah.
bar losing, like falling asleep because he was so far ahead, or mechanical DNF, your Grand Slam was in the bag at this point, because I mean,
Well, he still had to
they
come get the soft
literally
tires.
he did, but with a 39-second lead, he literally could have come in. They could have sent the same dude round to each tire to take them on and off, rather than doing 4 different. He had that much time.
Style points. They put him
Right.
on softs, and he did take the Grand Slam. We'll get to that in a second. Checo took Carlos, and then the question became, within the last 10 laps or so, will Checo get to George? And people were getting kind of interesting. Again, I enjoyed this race. Everything we've talked about to me was fun. And then the question became, can George create enough space to stay ahead of Checo? And it was interesting. But then I got to say this, a sidebar. And Martin Brundle on lap 58 said, why don't we limit the amount of DRS people can use? And I said to myself, hey, the dirty side's already talked about that, brother. You should be listening. It was good. And then we realized also, I wrote a note in the notes and I texted you, have we had any yellows? I can't remember a single yellow. And everyone was running, no retirements. And we realized, Rob and I, through our own astute notes, this is the second time in 3 races this has happened, because Miami, we had the same discussion on this here podcast 2 races ago before Monaco, that the same thing happened. I can't remember a time in F1 where we've had 2 of 3 races where you've had no yellows. I barely remember any races with no yellows and no retirements.
You see, because no one takes any risks on the rest of the lap.
On.
And they only overtake through DRS,
Oh,
you see,
geez.
that we're not going to get any yellows because it's easy. You just breeze
Yeah.
past. There's no crashes.
I apologize.
Although
for
what
Rob.
has tinfoil hat aside, that might account for on-track collision yellows, right? Because legitimately, people are not putting risky moves. They're waiting for DRS. But I'm staggered by the lack of mechanical DNFs this year.
Thank you. Agreed.
Like,
the reliability is through the roof.
Yes, we've not seen those big rooster tails of smoke as an engine lets go. We've seen nothing so far this season, which maybe it's because we're still early in the season and we've got false memory syndrome, and this is usually in the latter stage. But I'm sure we'd seen the external combustion engine.
I was going to say,
early.
by this point, Ferrari would have had 3 or 4 external combustion engines. Thank you, JP. JP was at the race. We're going to get his review in a minute. Lap 60, my second favorite part after George's internal rain shower in his helmet, was Fernando Alonso coming over the intercom, telling the team, please tell Lance he's doing a wonderful job in front of me, and I'm catching up to him only to keep a gap behind the cars behind me, but I won't attack him. I'm just here to hang out in his DRS zone, just as a friend, not a foe. Tell him not to worry. Don't push. I'm just hanging out. And I'm like, what in the hell? What's going on with Fernando Alonso? Someone has replaced him with somebody different. Lawrence Stroll is paying him an obscene amount of money under the table to act like this. There's no other reason. There's something going on. I don't get it. Do you get it?
I think you just have to admit Stroll did a good race this week. I don't think
he
Fernando.
Did.
There's two things. Stroll had to bounce back from a couple of real bad performances, and he did. He absolutely did. And I actually thought his drive was actually better than some of his earlier drives, because, as you've remarked a couple of times, had Aston kind of gone early with their performance improvements, and were they going to start tailing off? And I think that was obvious today that the Aston wasn't as good as in comparison to the Ferrari of Sainz and the 2 Mercedes. Earlier in the year, we probably would have expected Fernando to gobble those cars up, but Aston wasn't as good here. But Alonso wasn't as good. Alonso got beaten by Stroll in every session.
Can you change the floor in Parc Ferme without a penalty? I honestly don't know.
I don't think you're allowed to touch the car, are you, in terms of...
So did he have the same broken floor from quali?
Oh, no, hang on. I did hear them say...
Like parts?
I think you're allowed to... like for like,
yeah.
You can replace
so
and repair,
he had an okay floor in the race, even though he had a broken floor in quali.
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, then it was a disaster for him.
Yeah, I mean, you got to say kudos to Stroll.
Yes.
It wasn't Fernando's weekend. Maybe 33 got to him. But it'd be interesting to see if we have seen power dynamic shift between Aston and Mercedes. That Aston have had the upper hand of Mercedes for the first set of races. Those upgrades now, we'll come to a little bit on the upgrades later on Mercedes, actually, once we finish the race. But it'd be interesting to see how this pans out for the rest of the season.
So then we had Lando battling Magnussen for 17th. 17th. Man, I'm sorry for McLaren fans. I really am. I like Lando. What a horrible season this has turned into. Charles, they showed him in 12. He was still in the race. I hadn't seen him for a while, so it was good to know he was still there. He must be just driving around like, what is going on? And I know you're saying it's him. I'm saying it's not him. But and then on lap 63, George is 4.5 seconds ahead of Checo, and they're playing it up like there's still going to be a last lap battle. Like, bro, it's too late. We have gone too far. This is not going to happen. Move off of this, production crew. There's no chance he catches him.
One of the commentators, it might be Martin, and maybe he'll, or no, whoever must have said it at the end, and maybe they're going to get a slap on the wrist for getting rid of the drama, because one of the commentary team said, "Oh, and he's taken another second out of George," and I think the answer that came back was, "Yeah, but he needs to be taking 1.5 each lap,
right.
so
well, by
one's
this
not
point,
going to do
too
it."
late. That's why I said it's too late. And I'm like, then they said that. I'm like, duh. Which is a astute comment. And then Charles couldn't get Pierre for 11th because why could he? Those two guys had not the greatest days. But Yuki's penalty, which we didn't even talk about. So coming down the main straight, 10 laps earlier, Yuki does what I thought was a double move. And then Joe goes around the outside. And then Yuki kind of closes him off a little bit gently. And Joe, I thought, overreacted and went to the runoff. It wasn't that close. I mean,
yeah.
If it was me and you in regular cars at 50 miles an hour, I'd freaked out and screamed and went off into the runoff. But these are professionals, and we've seen much closer racing than that. I have to think the penalty was for that double jig move kind of on the end of the straight. But I don't know. I don't think Yuki deserved a penalty for the corner. Do you?
No, I don't. I agree with you 100%. I thought it was for the double move because it looked like there was more than the one allowed move being put on there.
And late into braking too, it felt like. But the corner move I thought was totally fine on Yuki's part. And then Merc 2-3. I can't believe Mercedes finished 2-3.
Wait. I neither can I, but let's give the credit to the person that was first, right? So
someone finished first?
Yeah.
I didn't see that person much either.
A Maxter class from Mr. Verstappen. I mean, the guy was untouchable today, and it was literally only going to be a force of nature, like something that led to a safety car or rain or something that could have knocked the wheels off him today. And that was you were spot on with the prediction last week. Not that I questioned you on it. Yeah, and then like you say, Mercedes 2 and 3. That's absolutely brilliant for them. They've just unleashed the upgrades. Like you say, we didn't really get to see them last week because Monaco can't really show off upgrades, and it looks like they're on the road to recovery now.
Well, do you think, here's a question for you about Mercedes before we move on to some stats. When you look at Mercedes, first real race, I don't count Monaco, first real race with the side pods, which we heard from Toto why they hadn't gone to them, but the shocker of the opening of the season, they said, we can't do this anymore. We got to go to the side pods. But last year, side podless. They still by Brazil were challenging, right? And George had a victory.
Yeah.
Do you believe that Mercedes can upgrade now that they have a direction, a design, sort of a North Star to work around? Can they get anywhere near Red Bull by the end of the year?
No, they can get nearer. They can close the gap. And I think we might see Mercedes become the best of the rest. And what will be intriguing now is to whether Aston can beat A, Ferrari often enough, and B, nick the odd one off Mercedes to keep their good start going, to keep them in that second spot. Because I think Mercedes are coming for them. Listening to Toto, Toto's not singing the praises of everything and saying Mercedes are back. They tried to lure him into saying that a few times when they were interviewing. So, Toto, are Mercedes back? And he would say no, blah, blah, blah. Next person. But can we think that Mercedes are back? So he did a really good job, I thought, of explaining, A, they almost said, why didn't you just abandon the side pods once they were rubbish? I'm paraphrasing what they asked him, but and his answer was, well, because you can't just switch direction like that. When you've made such a commitment to the new aero in a particular way, no side pods, it's not an overnight thing to just kind of go, let's put some side pods on it.
Some side pods on this
bolt some on. Williams have got some flat side pods we can just stick on the side.
Williams.
Williams
are up there using tracing paper.
But then what he did say, and I'd love to pick. Hey, maybe we can ask Paul when we see him in Canada, but I'd love to pick Paul's brains from being on the inside of Mercedes for a while, because what he said was, now that we've got a design that we believe in that we can move towards, which is obviously the new side pod design.
Yeah.
He said, one thing we are very good at all those years of domination is once we've got something, in your words, a North Star to go for, we can grind away at getting towards that.
Yeah.
And he said it in like no big grandstanding, no big anything. I thought, oh, that's actually quite ominous because
It is.
maybe they have got something now and they all do believe in it and they are trying to keep the excitement down and keep everyone's expectations low. But you could see the glimmer in his eye that he
Well, they
believes
did
there's
it
a
last
design
year
now
with
they
a
can go after.
crappier car. They did it
Yeah.
last year with the crappier car. Now, if this is a better start, if they've sort of taken a little leap, can they continue to refine that? I think they can. I agree with you, though. They're not going to catch Red Bull, in my opinion. I think we'll see Red Bull, we'll see Mercedes, and then we'll see a fight amongst Ferrari, Aston Martin, and Alpine.
You
I
think
Alpine's
Mercedes are
going to keep
nailed
going.
for second now in constructors?
I do.
Okay. I mean, they've got a little bit of ground to make up on, haven't they, on Aston?
I think they took over second
Or
already
did they
today.
did they take it today with the 2 and 3?
They did, yeah.
Oh, of course, because Alonso finished so far back today. So
Yep.
yeah, no. So if you think that is permanent now, that's the performance they're going to get, then you could well be right.
I mean, I don't know if it's permanent per se, but as of now, Red Bull has 287 points, Mercedes has 152, and Aston Martin has 134. So
Okay, yeah.
Aston Martin's got some work to do. Ferrari's at 100. I know Alpine's way back at 40, but I think you'll see them more putting their nose into those positions. Not necessarily constructors, but at least finishing races.
The interesting thing, the kind of the sound bites from this week as well around it was that it was interesting to hear Max say that he wishes they didn't tinker with the regulations so much because every time they tinker with the regulations, it causes one team to get like a leg up on it, and the longer they can leave the regulations static, the better chance everybody has a chance
Well,
of.
2021 was the end of that year's regulations, and it was really tight. I mean, went down to the last race until Michael Massey.
But then what they said about 2022 is that what we've got this year is a result of the FIA being stubborn and not relaxing a rule to give us better racing. And I didn't know what this meant. So I went digging a little bit and I ended up in a Reddit thread, which could be dangerous. But
it must be true.
The technical directive that came in last year, the short-term band-aid to get rid of porpoising, was then officially changed into a long-standing rule this year to do the ride height, right?
Yep.
And the ride height is kind of, again, been a bit of a rejig to what we saw last year. So we've kissed goodbye, I'm afraid, to the close racing that we had a brilliant honeymoon last year with the new regs. 2022 had some of the closest racing we've seen for a long time. Now this change in the regulations this year to raise the ride height to combat porpoising has led to more outwash from the cars. We're getting a little bit back more to dirty air, and we're not seeing the racing. However, they'd have agreed to have solved the ride height issue by going back to active suspension with the hydraulics in there, which would have allowed the cars to flex a bit more. They would have solved the porpoising and allowed the cars to run low to the ground, meaning we would have had pure ground effect and not any outwash, and we might have kept those same regs for 2 years running, and we might have been enjoying a second year of close running. So it's true. Every time they tweak, someone gets an advantage. And I just thought it was interesting to hear Max highlight that, because if anyone is benefiting right now from being the leader of the pack, I think he wants closer racing. I reckon he's bored.
Or, hear me out, I'm going to put a full tinfoil hat on.
Ooh.
The current chief technical officer at F1 is Pat Simmons, right? You've seen and familiar with him? You know he was indefinitely banned from any FIA event with Flavio Briatore because of Crashgate. So maybe someone's paying him off because he's already done some dirty things in his career. He's 69 years old. 69 is a good number. Anyway, moving on to some SAP stats from the race. I'm going to use the mariachi. I know that's Mexico and not Spain. I'm not stupid. It's just a great way to lead it off. SAP stats, Spanish GP edition. I had to bring the energy because Rob called me out last week. Here we go.
Yeah.
Grand Slams. Thank you, ma'am. There have been 26 drivers that have gotten a total of 65 in the entire history of Formula One since 1950. You may say, as Rob has posited, that Max has a dominant car. But in the history of F1, only 3 drivers have achieved consecutive Grand Slams. Jim Clark, Lizzie, if you're listening, that's for you, 1965 French and German Grand Prix. And we've talked about Clark's 65 season on A Veil's Tales. It's one of the best ever. Alberto Ascari's 1952 German and Dutch Grand Prix. We've talked about Ascari's 52, one of the best seasons ever. And Sebastian Vettel, interestingly enough, 2013 Singapore and Korean Grand Prix. The only times we've ever seen 2 in a row. So they don't happen all that often. Jim Clark has the most ever at 8. of the current drivers, only 4 drivers have ever achieved a Grand Slam. Lewis with 6, Max now with 3. 3, that's it. And then Fernando has won, and Charles Leclerc has won last year. The last one was actually 2022 at Imola last season. There was some confusion. I asked the master virtual statman Sean Kelly this morning before the race, saying one of us has predicted a Grand Slam for Max. I can't believe the whole Twitter sphere didn't notice that and come back and say, wow, you got that right. But so Sean Kelly thought it was actually Australia. It turned out he got his races backwards. And so it was Australia, then Imola. And it was the only time in F1 that there have been consecutive Grand Slams by different drivers or teams. So there have been 4 back-to-back Grand Slams in the history of F1, 3 by the same driver, and once last year, Imola and Australia, by different drivers and teams. And so then I did a little bit of my own digging even further, because that's what we do here on the SAP Stats portion of the podcast. Since the 2004 Hungarian Grand Prix, we've had a total of 17, including today's Grand Slams, in 360 races. And yes, I had to do some manual math to figure out how many races that was. That's 4% of the time. I nailed a 4% probability call. I nailed it, Rob, so suck it. What do you think of that?
Didn't disagree with you, so what am I don't get this.
Yeah, well, that's right, man. You shouldn't talk smack. So anyway, some more stats, a few Sean Kelly's in here. Verstappen today reached the checkered flag for the 26th consecutive time finishing a race, the longest run in Red Bull's history, surpassing Daniel Ricciardo's 25 in a row from 2015 to 16. Red Bull cars have led every lap of 3 consecutive races. The last team to do that was Mercedes in 2020. Crofty had a stat for us during the race with Lewis Hamilton second and Verstappen first. Those two have now finished first, second 35 times. Hamilton's won 20 and Verstappen 15. And if Mercedes side pods thing is real, I think we're going to see this number grow, but on the Verstappen side. It was Russell's first podium finish of the year. Mercedes double podium means they move ahead of Aston Martin into the Constructors' Championship second, as I'd already said. And then in my mind, we kind of had a great feel for Carlos Sainz. And so as we looked at the whole Carlos Sainz thing, I don't like these stats, if I'm being honest. Carlos Sainz took P5 for Ferrari and is the highest driver in the championship and 6th without a podium finish in 2023. However, he's maintained his 100% scoring record in 9 Spanish Grand Prix, but he's also never been on the podium. So, Carlos, we are sorry for... Stop inventing. Joe finished P9 for Alfa Romeo, matching his best result of the season. He was also 9th in Australia. Pierre Gasly finished in the same position he started, P10, even though he's had a wandering weekend where he was actually 4th, then 2-3 grid penalties, 10th, and then some slow pit stops and some chaos, got back to 10th. Charles Leclerc finished P11 because of Yuki's penalty, which I don't think was deserved, which means, Rob, he has failed to score in 3 of the first 7 races. Failed to score points in 3 of the first 7 races. And we already talked about the fact that there were 107 overtakes. Last year at Spain, with that grotesque chicane at the end, there were 50. So I enjoyed the race. I liked watching it. I thought it was fun. I loved predicting the Grand Slam out of the blue because I'm tremendous and you are not. And so that was my SAP stats. Anything before we bring in Pit Lane Paul?
I fell asleep while you were talking about DRS overtakes, so I think we should listen to Pit Lane Paul.
I have not heard what Pit Lane Paul has to say, but Paul, we are welcome you to the pod at this time. Oh, wait, should we do an intro? I should do an intro.
It would be good. And then this time, just intro and straight into Paul rather than coming back and apologising.
Good idea.
Hey now. Yes, get that in again. It's always good.
Yes.
So there is a song called Barcelona with Freddie Mercury, some other lady in it. And the opening lyric is that I've had this perfect dream. And maybe this relates to the fact that the new circuit changes made it a fairly decent race for overtaking. It also claims it's the first time that we met, and it isn't, as I think I've been to this track nearly 300 times now. Fair to say I'm quite sick of this place. And it also claims it took our breath away. Well, in fairness, the race wasn't actually that bad, but nothing really to take your breath away as such. I mean, the circuit changes in the last section of lap made, it's fast, good overtaking at the end of the straight. I would say I don't think I remember a recent race where the cars on lap 20 had a mixture of like 5 cars running soft, 6 cars running like medium, and then 9 hard like tyre runners. So that was actually quite impressive. It was quite, but you sort of then didn't really know. Like, I found a race strangely hard to follow based on that fact, because you didn't really know who was where in a roundabout way, if that makes any sort of sense. Whereas normally when it's sort of like pretty boring, it's quite straightforward. But anyway, it did make it an exciting race, to be fair. There's lots of overtaking, and the tyre strategies, like I said, it was pretty hard to figure out who the hell was, what and where. But going through the field, look, Leclerc, geez, he really struggled. That car's got a big problem, let's be fair. I don't know what it was, but you can't be that far off. You've only got to look at the pace of science to see that. Mercedes look decent and strong. It's encouraging for them. So hopefully, the changes for those, let's put them in the right direction. Strangely, only race pace, because they're actually single lap pace didn't blow anyone away. But okay. Lance Stroll, look, he had a Western in Monaco, so he had to perform here. And yeah, I think towards the end, especially when Alonso sort of like, let's hold position. I think Alonso could have eaten him for breakfast, but it was better from him. I think he needed a good race. But actually seeing Aston that far back after the start of the year they had is quite a concern. Obviously, Mercedes have kicked ahead, I think. Again, it makes the next few races pretty good. Behind was the usual mix of Alpha and Alpine, the triple A's, with a random Ferrari at Leclerc, McLaren, poor Lando, and all down to Haas and Williams, and then another car trailing around towards the back. But the race again, no yellow flags. Did it make it boring? Good. Rain threatened but never come. Again, did it need it? I don't know. But to conclude this one, look, the race was good. Lots going on. Max again just drove away. Look, being an old Mercedes man, where we dominated for years, I can't say it's boring. It's not fair. It's not his fault or Red Bull's fault. They've got a much superior car to anyone else. So you've just got to take that. Aside from that, I don't really want to talk too much about Valtteri's race. I'll just get emotional. But yeah, onwards to Canada. Canada's a great place, even though I know some of you Americans have got a bit of banter like we do with the French. It'll be a lot of fun, especially good to catch up with Robin Bryan. And, Brian, I hope the results of your medical check at the clinic a few weeks ago have come back all clear and you can travel. That's good.
Yeah.
Yep. And I hope to enjoy a beer. But, what was meant to be a triple header turned out to be a double. I hope all is good in the Bologna area. No one likes to see that sort of flooding, but I will be happy to get back into the countryside of England. Final one from me. I never really liked Queen or Freddie Mercury, by the way. Just putting it out there. Onwards and upwards.
Paul, that was epic.
You looked a little confused at one point when he used a phrase that I knew you'd have no clue what he was talking about.
Which one?
When he said he'd had a bit of a Western.
Yeah, I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, so there is a seaside resort in the UK called Weston, and its full name is Weston Supermare. So whenever you've had a nightmare and something has gone completely badly, you shorten it and say he's had a complete Western. So and there you go. A little bit of knowledge for you now. Yeah, anything ever goes wrong, just regale your friends by saying he's had a Western there.
Yeah, no one know what the hell I'm saying. And then
exactly. They never do anyway. So
well, that's true. So your colleague was at the race, sent some videos and pictures, which were fantastic early on, and I got 2 plugs. First of all, we have a really fun and strong Discord participation group. And so I'd recommend anyone who's interested joining us on the Discord. The link is always at the bottom of the show notes. And if that's too hard to find, www.dirtysideofthetrack.com. But JP, who is tremendous, I have his art on my wall in the media room, was there as well. And he went from Holland all the way to Barcelona, and JP sent in a report as well. So JP, it is your turn, sir.
Well, as they say, the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plane, and that's what it did today. A few drops on track. Anyway, it was a very entertaining race. Lots of tire deck, which made for some interesting choices. Sadly, the Spanish drivers did disappoint a little. The Mercedes upgrades seem to do the work. At least we have a very good result for Mercedes. One man reigned supreme though. Max took it all.
Yes, he did. He reigned supreme. He was unstoppable, unbelievable. And like Rob, like you said, I got to give you some credit. If Carlos wasn't going to challenge him at turn one, his day was done. Max just drove off, feet up, reading the paper, having a coffee. That was it.
Yeah, there was only one moment in the entire race then that I can think of that your Grand Slam looked in jeopardy, which was on the hards. He didn't like the hards as much, and he only had something like a 16 or 17 second lead on Hamilton, and he said, "I need to change these tires. They're not good." And they coaxed him out of it. They made him kind of go around and just build, just marginally build his lead up to 29 seconds or whatever it was.
But I mean, you
if
say
he'd had
like
to come in and
yeah, you say that like a week ago. I knew he was going to finish first in quali, or that Checo wouldn't beat him, or that he'd build up enough time.
we all knew he'd finish first. We both said it last week.
In the race, we didn't predict quali, and second, you never know. I mean, it's so rare because most times people will pit and maybe lose track position at times, which he didn't have to do because he built up so much of a lead.
The problem with all of this is if you go back and listen to last week's thing, your SAP stats
we're back
pretty
to
much. No, okay, fine.
loser.
I didn't lose because I didn't disagree with you. I don't get this, Brian. I don't understand what's going on.
But speaking of something you won at was Monaco. We didn't get a chance because the thing was computing. You all right over there?
I don't understand you at all.
I know. It's a complex person. And so last week, Monaco Fantasy, we got to shout out the top 10. And I had a shocker. And I was saying this to Rob before we started. I'm sort of done with fantasy. I don't, you can have, like, it just doesn't make sense. First of all, the scoring doesn't work. The values don't work. The template works. And if you play anything related to the template, you're fine. And you make a horrendous mistake and it really doesn't penalize you. And you can do some amazing predictions and it doesn't help you. It doesn't matter how the driver does. It's just, I'm done. But anyway, I had a bad race last week, 63rd. I'm going to keep playing. Like I'm in it, and the first half gets a t-shirt, and I'm still giving it my best, but I'm just kind of frustrated. So 63rd for me last week, which is fine. It's great. But number one, there can be only one. Much mistaken in second. Afoninji won. In third, JC2609, which might be someone's password, is fourth, tied with Start Your Engines 1. French Vries, Thinking Time, Farewell to Pukey, Overpowered Racing, Neon Genesis F1 team, Vales Fails, and F1 Wings team in 10th, tie for 10th there. Vales Fails, good job by you last week.
It wasn't. It was the template. I mean,
that's exactly my point.
I can't even gloat over this one because I literally just got lucky that. How many things do you pick? Is it 5 or 6 things that you pick?
Whatever.
So anyway, literally was just the difference between you and I having different non-template driver.
Yeah.
That's it.
And then this week we had a little return to form for most people in terms of more points. We had There Can Only Be One in first with 302. Relampago Marquinhos in second, tied with Much Mistaken 301 with Crash Team Racing 1, Zanetto Team 1, Max Gladwell Racing, and Checkoed Flag. Max Gladwell, look at you, Rob. 301 points. But all those ties for second meant we then had ties for eighth. Oh, man. San Gaucho El Cuelo F1, Afoninji 1, Vincendez 1, Haley Torque F10, the Sigma Tauris, all in eighth, followed by some dude named Dirty Side Sap in 13th. That matters, but I was next. I didn't find Vales Fails. I couldn't scroll down far enough. How'd you do this week, man? 28th. Good job. That's pretty good.
Tied for... Oh, my God.
That's much better than my 63rd. I think I win the record for I was last, but anyway, sorry. I just I don't get down often, and I'm down on the game. So right now, in terms of the overall league, I'm somehow first, which makes no sense because I was 63rd last week. But okay,
because everyone's got the same team, so it's all going to come down to if someone plays whatever the triple thing's called this year in a better time than you do. I think.
So I'm first, 2152. McLapham, I just enjoy the names. Blacks for strap on. For sure at Alan Giron, Vincendes won, Neon Genesis F1 team. Busy Bee Racing, that's JP who was at the race. In 7th, Potenza Racing 9th, and then at 10th, Much Mistaken 2074, which is everybody. It's very tight up at the top because we're all playing the template. So, yeah, fantasy. Good job, Rob, whooping me last week at Monaco. I was terrible. But moving on to bigger and better things. Do you know that the next F1 race is in 2 weeks in a place called Canada, and we're going to be there? Are you aware of this?
I'm not aware. Tell me more.
The Amazon guy is delivering things to my house every day. Earplugs, power chargers, adapters, hats, sunscreen. I mean, like it's the Amazon guy knows where I'm going.
And all the clinic tests did come back okay then?
Yeah, Paul, no worries. Everything's all, I got a clean bill of health from my OBGYN, so I'm ready to go.
I can't wait. I have no idea what we're going to talk about next week other than probably just being... well, let's be honest, we're going to be far too excited. No one's going to probably want to listen next week as we just probably
prattle on about Canada.
Yeah, prattle on about Canada, really, I think is all that we've got for next week. But
works for me.
We'll find something. We'll find... We'll probably still be trying to work out how on earth Brian is getting so excited about making a Grand Slam call by winning against people that didn't disagree.
You are a loser. And with that, we're going to end it for the week. Everybody have a wonderful week. We'll be back next week with some form of a podcast, which will include a Canada preview because we will be at the race. We'll talk more about that shortly.